All right, welcome to the 2019 deliberative session for the Monadnock Regional School District, SAU 93. My name is Bill Hutwelker, and I serve at your pleasure as your moderator. We have 4 assistant moderators. If you could each stand up when I call your name or wave your hand so people see you. Bruce Tatro from Swansea, State Rep. Dick Thaxton from Troy. Ken Colby from Swansea. And Sly Karazinski from Swansea. If you have any questions and you can't get my attention, please ask one of them, and they'll make sure that you're observed. During the course of the meeting, we may have opportunity for for a stand-up vote or a hand vote, and they'll be responsible for doing the counting. So before we get into the meeting, we have the opportunity to have 3 of our young people joining us. We have Savannah Wilkes from Wheelock School, a Keene representative, Olivia Knightley from Troy, and Shane Rediker from Cutler. If you would all rise and join in them in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Behind you, guys. Behind you. Savannah. Right here. Okay. Yell it out.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. Oh, great. Okay. Please observe the 4, 5, 6 exits that we have, 2 up front, 2 in the back, and then 2 in the middle. I've been asked to announce that the child care will close at 12 sharp. And if you haven't noticed, there are bake sales going on. The class of 2021 is out in the foyer. I'd like to ask, before we get into the meeting, did everybody have an opportunity to read the rules that we have for the meeting? Essentially, we refer to them as the Cade and Kyle rules. We do not observe Robert's Rules of Order. With the exception of our attorney, none of us here are experts in Robert's Rules of Order. Just the goal that we have is that we have an opportunity to discuss the individual warrant articles, to get information from the administrators, from the school board and the budget committee. We expect everyone to participate with a level of decorum, to be civil in comments, no personal attacks. Those will be ruled out of order. We've only had one opportunity in the past to ask someone to be removed. We hope that doesn't arise today. In terms of the format of the meeting, if you know that you're going to make an amendment to an article, if you could do that in writing and hand it to us before the article comes up, it would be helpful. During the course of going through the article, Lisa Witt will notice any changes up here that have been proposed by amendment. There seems to be, on occasion, some confusion with how the warrant articles are handled. Essentially, what this is an opportunity for you to read the article, amend the article, have discussion on it, and then the article moves to the warrant. There's no straight up or down. Once the article has amended, once the amendments have been approved, then it goes as we've amended it. Does anyone have any question about that? Okay. We have the school board is seated to my left, and the budget committee is seated to my right. I'll ask Lisa Stedman, who's chair of the school board, to introduce herself and the members of her board.
Good morning, I'm Lisa Stedman. I represent the town of Troy, currently serving as chair of the school board.
I don't think your microphone's on, sorry.
I represent the town of Troy. I've been serving on the school board for 9 years. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hello, Betty Tatro, town of Swansea.
Neil Moriarty, Richmond.
Karen Buhner, Swansea.
Scott Peters, Troy.
Eric Stanley, Swansea.
Nick Mosier, Roxbury.
Rob Colbert, Swansea.
Winston Wright, Fitzwilliam.
Brian Bohannon, Swansea.
Kristen Noonan, Fitzwilliam.
Karen Wheeler, Gilsum.
And Wayne Lecklider for the Budget Committee.
Hi, my name's Wayne Lecklider. I'm the chair from Swansea. In the front row here, we have Doug Bursaw from Richmond, Wayne Lacoste from Swansea, Jillian Exel from Swansea, Joanne Darris from Fitzwilliam, Colleen Toomey from Swansea, Dan Kaufman from Swansea, Adam Hopkins, my bodyguard from Troy, and I think I see Tom Parker from Fitzwilliam out in the audience.
If we could have a round of applause for these people, they put in hundreds of hours on your behalf. To my right is Attorney Jim O'Shaughnessy and Assistant Moderator Keith Tebow. Keith plays a very important role in this meeting. When you come up to speak to the body, Keith is going to keep you to your 3-minute time limit. And he's very adept at that. We have 2 methods to go, but his primary one is with cards that you can see. So if you observe him, you'll see how much time you have moving forward. I'd like to introduce Lisa Witt to introduce members of the administration.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here on a Saturday morning to take part in this important process for our school district. Rather than calling out all of the administrators by name, I would like to just indicate that our full administrative team is seated in the front, and that if you ever have any questions of any of them or myself, feel free to reach out. I would like to recognize our district clerk and our our deputy clerk. Our district clerk, Lillian Sutton, is also the administrative assistant to the superintendent and the director of curriculum. And without her planning and the assistance of Michelle, this event would not be as well organized and prepared as it is. So if we could please give Lillian and Michelle a round of applause for all of their hard work. And I did notice that some of our local legislators are in attendance. So if you are a local legislator and you are in attendance, would you mind please standing and so that we can recognize you? I see Senator Jay Kahn to my right, Representative Bruce Tatro to my left, and also Representative Barry Faulkner.
Jenny Gamarlo. Jenny Gamarlo.
Oh, and Jenny Gamarlo, our newly elected representative. Thank you. And I would like to just mention to folks, if you have been noticing what's happening up in Concord, and we have legislators here that you can certainly speak to today, but there are a lot of bills coming through the House right now that are important to education, specifically education funding from the state level. I've had the opportunity to go to Concord and testify twice so far this legislative session on bills that would help increase the amount of adequacy funds that our district receives. If you're at all interested in learning more about that process, I'm sure any of our legislators would be happy to speak with you, as would I. You can feel free. I have some of my cards up on the front table if you would like to grab one at the end, and you can have my phone number and email and be in touch. So again, thank you for being here this morning, and I'll turn it back over to our moderator.
Before then, could we have the administrators and Lisa stand for our appreciation? Thank you. Do we have any teachers and paraprofessionals here? If you are, could you please rise so we can express our appreciation for all the work you do for our kids? And if we have any others, maintenance staff, clerical, anyone else, please stand, even if it's just you, Dave. Come on.
Come on. That's all we need.
Hi, Rob. Well, as Lisa mentioned, Senator Jay Kahn is here, and we're very privileged to have him. I think most of you know, or if you don't, he's been a very active state senator for us. He's been very active in the schools as well as the communities, and we owe him a tremendous debt of appreciation. But before we do that, let's have Jay come up and speak to us about what he's doing in Concord to improve our schools. Jay.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you all. I saw the movie Queen last night. That was Bohemian Rhapsody, if you have seen it. So I have the pleasure of going to 5 different deliberative sessions in the next few weeks, the second one this week. And in the state Senate, my appointments are as the chairman of Education and Workforce Development and a member of the Finance Committee. So while I will not be voting with you today, I will be voting with you many times in Concord on educational funding questions. As the moderator just explained, and I'm sorry, the superintendent just explained, there are a number of education funding bills in this session, things that will help fund public education in this state. They have to do with the adequacy aid, they have to do with retirement funding, with stabilization grants that are scheduled to continue to decrease that would potentially stabilize at current or maybe even back up to previous levels. Special education funding is on the agenda as well. My point in saying that is there are any number of ways, and I think there will be at least 3 ways, that the legislature will help future education funding, but that's not going to help you in your deliberations today. Those discussions will continue to take place, and your active involvement and communication with the legislature and with the governor's office will be very important. There are differing perspectives on funding. You can hear the governor talk about how one-time funding to schools is very important, and that has provided over the last 2 years funding for safety improvements and building improvements. But that's not the ongoing funding that is what I believe is your primary attention. How do we help support schools and help taxpayers with some relief at the same time? If you saw an editorial that I wrote in the last month in the Keene Sentinel, that is exactly the message I took from the November elections. Taxpayer relief and better funding from the state for public schools go hand in glove, and it's a commitment that I'm making to support you in those efforts. Second thought, you have a wonderful public school system here in your district. Your administrators, your teachers, tutors, your coaches, they help students do amazing things at all levels, on the playing field, in the theater, in the classrooms, in internships, and in getting off to a good start in school so that they're not falling behind in their early years. As we deal with state funding, we have to sustain our support for public schools. Part of that is how you do it through funding. Part of it is how you do it with your heart and with your support and your active engagement to support the people and your students. Those two go hand in glove. It's hard for the public as a whole to support public schools if the taxpayers themselves are not supporting them. So as we move down this path, it's going to be a 6-month process. We may not agree on the budget the first time. It may take a veto session and an override. But by the time we're back here next year, I believe that the funding situation will be different in state aid to public schools, and hopefully your school board and your leadership will be able to offer options back to the taxpayers to help provide both quality education and property tax relief. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. If you're a non-voter, you should be seated in the upper right portion of the auditorium. If you're a voter sitting in the non-voting area, you would want to come forward. Just going to read the beginning. To the inhabitants of the Cooperative School District in the towns of Fitzwilliam, Gilsum, Richmond, Roxbury, Swansea, and Troy, who are qualified to vote in the district affairs, you are hereby notified to meet at the Monadnock Regional Middle High School on Saturday, the 2nd of February, 2019, at 10 o'clock in the forenoon for the purpose of hearing an explanation of the following subjects and to carry on any discussion or debate with respect thereto, with said subjects to be open to amendment. Notice, school district officers will be elected at the second session of the annual meeting of the Monadnock Regional School District on March 12, 2019, in accordance with the statutory election procedures adopted by a vote of the district on March 11, 1996. The school district warrant for the election of school district officials will be posted in accordance with revised statutes annotated, known as RSA 40:13, in each of the district's member towns. The polls will be open to voters in their towns of residence on March 12, 2019, as follows. Fitzwilliam, Town Hall, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Gilsum, in the Gilsum Community Center from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. Richmond, in Veterans Hall from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Roxbury, in the Meeting House from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., and they begin their town meeting at 7 p.m. In Swansea, at the Christian Life Fellowship Church from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. In Troy, at the Samuel E. Paul Community Center, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you are intending to vote, the expectation is that you've registered with your member of the checklist in the annex, and they would have given you four colored sheets in the event that we have a secret ballot. Is there anyone here who has not registered, who needs to? Okay, I remind you, this is your meeting. If I make a ruling that you disagree with, you're more than welcome to make a motion to overrule my meeting. This is your meeting. This is your opportunity to engage the officials, the administration, the school board, and the budget committee to learn how they've arrived at the numbers they have and the warrant articles that are here. It is not our practice for me to read the warrant article. You all have handouts, and we've got the slide here. If anybody would like me to read the warrant article, good, I appreciate it. So we'll move into the warrant. Article 1, do we have someone to move Article 1? Brian Bohannon, Swansea, do we have a second? I'm sorry.
The number's incorrect that was handwritten in here. It
Okay.
should be $31,500,600, not 776 rather, so. $31,500,776 should be the number outside of the parentheses. The number within the parentheses is correct. Can you confirm that? The handwritten copy that everybody has, Ms. Witt.
Wait, not everyone has that one. The handwritten portion was just a copy that was handed to me.
That's the posted warrant. That was not changed. The posted warrant on January 28th was not amended and reposted.
Yeah, just for the clarification of the audience, the number that's handwritten in the bottom is incorrect. That's what I'm trying to get at.
They don't have anything handwritten on their copies.
Oh, okay. The number up there is correct, Dick. I just didn't want people being distracted if you got this copy with that.
All right, Brian, you okay with your moving the motion? We have a second? We have a second on the motion to move the article? We have a second. Identify yourself in town.
Paul Sharing, Swansea.
Thank you, Paul. All right. Lisa, would you like to speak to the article? I'm sorry. Yeah, Lisa, yeah.
Lisa Stedman. This operating budget is supported by the board and the budget committee. It is almost exactly as proposed by the administration earlier in the season. We support the recommendations that they've made.
Okay. Budget Committee have any comments on the article?
Yeah, we haven't voted on whether to support the article or not yet. We did move the number forward that was given to us from the administration. Just to speak a little bit about the default number that's been in the paper lately, I just want to clarify. So we went round and around with the administration and the school board as far as what we felt should be the right number and the right formula to be used. The way the law is written, there's a lot of discretion that's given to the Budget Committee, and we were interpreting it a different way than the administration and the school board was, and we got some clarification from Jim O'Shaughnessy, the school district attorney, which we'll take for now. But the way we came up with the default number in the end last Tuesday, when we came up with the number that you'll see before you today, we took the number that the district gave to us, the administration gave to us, which should have included the raises, lane changes for the contractual obligations. And then we subtracted out of there what we considered to be one-time expenses. The one-time expenses that we pulled out were textbooks, new equipment, and replacement equipment. So based on the number that the administration gave us, we subtracted $272,715 from that number, and that's where we came up with the default number that you have before you. There was a lot of debate amongst the Budget Committee as far as what the actual spend has been over the last 2 years, and on average it was $29,700,000, and we were trying to close that gap. And so that's why we put so much work into the default number this year. But ultimately, we didn't feel as though going through the courts and challenging the ruling and the opposition would benefit anybody, especially from a financial standpoint or an embarrassment for the district. So that's where we're at. Did I cover that, Budget Committee?
Do we have any signed up? Go ahead.
I'd like to call up at least a couple of folks that have signed up to speak. Anyone is still can speak if they choose to. But up first is Douglas Bursaw.
Sorry, I'm such a slowpoke. My name is Douglas Bursaw. I'm from Richmond. I am a member of the Budget Committee, but I am not speaking as a member of the Budget Committee now. I'm speaking as a private citizen. I'd like to make a few comments. Number one, the last 3 years in the school district has not actually spent more than $30 million in total. 29.7.8.9 million. The amount of the budgets that have been proposed and passed by the voters is considerably more than that. So I am proposing an amendment to the operating budget. The first number that you see up there, 32,444,093, I would like to propose an amendment that we change that figure to $31,500,254. For quite a long time now, the district has had what I call...
Excuse me, Doug, did you make a motion?
Yes, I made the motion.
Then we would need a second. Who seconded it? Name and town? Did you get that? Traeger. Thank you. Go ahead, Doug.
So one of the problems in Monadnock District, as I see it as a taxpayer, is our average cost per pupil. The Monadnock District cost per pupil is almost $18,000 per student. The state average is under $16,000, it's $15,900 something. The three districts that surround us, Keene, Winchester, and Jaffrey Ringe, all have per pupil costs at or below the state average. Ours is more than $2,000 per pupil on top of that. So I don't know why the district has this excessive cost per pupil, but it shows up in our taxes on a regular basis. I would like personally to see the per pupil cost get down into a range that's at least close to the state average, which means that the Monadnock district budget should be around $27 million, not well over 30 if we're going to be hitting even something approximately the state average on a cost per pupil. The last 3 years in a row, the budget approved by the voters has been underspent. In other words, the district did not spend all the money that was allocated. Last year, the budget overrun was over $2 million. Now, granted, that money does go back to the taxpayers at the end of the year, but the fact is, why is it raised, appropriated, and sitting around for a whole year? It could be spent. Thankfully, the administration did not spend it. They were responsible in that, but they could be working on getting the number down something close to the state average.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Would anyone care to speak to the amendment?
Bill, can we just clarify that? Can we just clarify that that doesn't include the 970,000? That's strictly the budget, not the.
That number that I gave you, could you read it off, Bill?
$31,500,254.
That does include the 970,000.
Okay. Did you understand that, Lisa? Okay. So before we move further, don't we need to come up with a different number absent the 970? No?
Well, absent the 970 is the first number you have on the sheet that I gave you.
$30,431,254?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so do you want to amend your motion to $30,431,254, which would not include the 970,000?
Yes, that would be fine. You could put it up either way. So the first number would be,
I think he's all set the way, he's amending that number that's up there, and that already includes it, so.
It does.
that 31.5 includes the 970.
Okay. All right, so we'll leave it there. All right, thank you. Dick? Oh, he's speaking to the amendment.
Hi, my name is Dick Thaxton. I'm from Troy. I would like to speak against this amendment. The budget that we have originally proposed is supported clearly by the administration and the school board. The budget committee hasn't made a determination either way on it, but I think it's really important to provide our school district. Jay Kahn gave a nice discussion of what's really right with our school district. And I think it's important to support the district, give them the tools they need to do the job. They're doing an excellent job. This change will have a negligible benefit on anybody's tax rate and will create substantial difficulties in the operating budget in the coming year. So for that reason, I would speak against it. And to support my reason for speaking against it, if you take the time to go online and look at the rating of the Monadnock Regional School District against every other school district in Cheshire County, you will find that it is the most highly rated school district on Zillow of any school district in Cheshire County. So I would like to keep it that way because that will do more for your property values in the future than whatever this is going to do by reducing your tax bill by $1.88. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Would anyone else care to speak to the amendment?
Yes.
Oh,
Elliot Kaplan from Gilsum. I'm also a teacher here at the high school. I'm speaking against the amendment. One of the interesting things about the deliberative session is we are damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. If we spend the money, then we're being profligate. If we don't spend it, we didn't need it. So no matter what happens, we're going to be condemned. Quite honestly, the money is going to be needed, and if we manage not to spend it all, it does go back to the taxpayers. If you support the amendment and we need the money, then we don't have it. We're working very hard to educate the children. We do need certain things, but I know every teacher here, at least in the high school, I can't speak for the elementary school, so I'm not there, works very hard to keep their expenses down. So what's going to happen is if you do the lower one and we save money, we're going to cut the budget again, and then cut the budget again, and then cut the budget again, and then, oh, by the way, we don't have enough money. The money does go back. Thank you.
thank you, Elliot.
My name is Nick Mosier. I'm on the school board, but I'd also like to speak as a citizen as well. This upcoming year, I think we're going to be losing something close to $800,000 in state funding. So administration has to accommodate that in addition to some additional cuts that they've made willingly to reduce the budget. So doing this even further puts us at even more of a disadvantage. And I don't think that the small change in taxes that people are going to see justifies this. Thank you.
Would anyone else care to speak to the article, the amendment? Doug? As an FYI, I have 6 signatures asking for secret ballot on this amendment. I think in fairness to the body, those 6 people should at least come and speak to the amendment. You're not required to, but I would suggest that you do.
Just 2 quick notes on the comments that were made. This number that I have proposed is close to, is much more than what was actually spent last year. And if there's a fear that there is not enough money to cover certain things, the district does have 3 trust funds, one for building, one for special education, and one for fuel costs. Those 3 reserve funds total close to $500,000. So there's already $500,000 put aside just in case necessities come up. And the number that I have proposed is still a lot more than was actually spent last year because I included the administration's rises for certain legal things such as insurance increases, contractual increases, and the loss of state funds, which, as Mr. Khan noted, the stabilization grants and the adequacy grants from the state are going down. So there's money built in to cover that as well. This number is much more than was spent last year in order to cover those exigencies.
Thank you, Doug. Would anyone else care to speak to the amendment? I would ask that Kathleen Bursaw, Janice Montgomery, Gregory Butko, Eugene Dalala, Kathleen Dalala, and Barbara Bursaw stand so I can be sure that you're all here as requesting a secret ballot. Okay, thank you. The question's been called. We have a second. That was who called the question? I can't see that far, I'm sorry. Okay. All right, everybody prepared for secret ballot? We'll use...
Are we doing secret ballot on the amendment or the overall?
The amendment. We're voting just on the amendment. We're going to use the yellow slip. Okay, we'll ask the assistant moderators to come up. We have 3 boxes. Pass them down. Okay, we had 243 votes cast. 1 was blank. The yeses were 113 and the noes 129, so the amendment fails. So back on track, speaking to Article 1 as originally proposed, Greg Butko from Richmond.
My name is Greg Butko, and I live on 119. And what I wanted to speak about is, I don't like the way this whole thing is set up. You're supposed to be the public schools. The public is supposed to be running this thing, not a bunch of people that say, well, you know, you either got to go with this number or the number last year. I say last year was too high. I'm a public school graduate from like 50 years ago. And when I went to school, it cost nowhere near what it costs now. And I'm not talking about dollar-wise. I'm talking about what my parents earned. The taxes are outrageous. Half of our taxes are going to the public schools. I got a better education than the kids are getting today. Look at where we are compared to other countries. I mean, everybody's seen the numbers, like we're number 26 in math or something. Another thing that I want to address is some politicians here have been lying to us. They keep talking about tax relief or property tax
Excuse
relief.
me, Greg.
Yes.
We're not going to tolerate that type of language.
I didn't, what? What language?
That people here are lying to you.
Well, they are.
Well,
they're talking about property tax relief. What they really want is to push a state income tax or a sales tax. And everybody
we're
pays...
here to debate the article as proposed.
Okay, well, I think it's too high, and I think the default budget is too high. I guess that's all I got to say then.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. Would anyone else care to speak to Article 1 as originally proposed? We have a motion to move the article from Elliott. Did you get that, Laura? Okay, move on to Article 2. So Article 1 will appear on the ballot as you saw it. Okay, Article 2. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 1 from Elliott. Do we have a second? Who gave the second? What's you got that? Who is that person? Lori Simzik? Lori, sorry. Well, close. It is horseshoes. Okay, all those in favor of restricting reconsideration signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Article 2. Eric?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry? I'm sorry.
Hi, Herb Drug from Troy. I'd like to make a motion to address Article 9 before Article 2, please.
Okay, I didn't catch your name.
Herb Drug.
Herb Drug, do you have that? And we have a motion to move Article 9 to this position. Did we have a second? Second. Alan Bailey? Okay, we have a second, Alan Bailey. All right, before we rule on this, I just want to make you aware that I had a call from someone who was at last year's deliberative session who indicated that because a similar warrant article was moved to the beginning of the warrant, that some people weren't able to be here to either debate it or vote on it. And I think the expectation is by people that when they read a warrant, they anticipate that articles that they're interested in are going to come up at a time based on what they see in the list. So I just want to let you know that should we face a similar situation this year, if this motion passes, we will not accept a motion to delay the vote if there's people that are just arriving late. So now, would anyone care to speak to moving Article 9 to the second position? All right. All those in favor of moving Article 9 to the second position signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Ayes have it. So we'll move to Article 9.
First one, there's a first one up to that signed up to
Wait,
speak.
so we got it. Is there anyone wish to move the article? I need a name and a town. Carl Patton, Troy, and we have a second?
Second.
Did you get that, Laura? Okay, all right. Who would like to speak to Article 9?
First one up is Ben Drug. Troy.
That was not me. Good morning, everybody. We're back again. So again, my name is Ben Drug. I'm from Troy. A little background since last year. I've been at the center of this funding formula debate since November 2017. I have studied every aspect of this. I've heard every single argument there is on the matter, both the irrational and the rational. Someone at this meeting last year stated that a committee should be formed of community members that should deal with this in the coming year. They said, let's wait a year. Well, that citizen committee was formed within weeks of the vote in March. Every town was well represented on the committee. We met with the school board and the select boards throughout the district to garner their involvement. We held 17 separate meetings to discuss this one issue. Even though the committee could not agree on a single formula, we made sure that our work was exhaustive and well documented. All of our hard work was handed over to the school board in September. This left them 4 months to deal with this and put something on the warrant for us to vote on. They did nothing. This year, I'm already hearing people state that the school board didn't have enough time to get to it, and we should give them another chance. Frankly, I don't buy it. I often tell myself that I didn't have time to do something that I put off, and the truth is, I didn't make the time, and if it was a priority, I certainly would have. Over the past 15 months, there are 3 things that I have learned to be true about all of this. First is equalized tax rate is the only way to be fair. 50-50 gets us pretty close. Second, the cost per student figures are for 2 things only. As we heard earlier, to measure the performance of our district as it relates to other districts in the state, and to determine if your town should consider moving out of the district. It's not a viable way to set the tax rate. And third and final, all the evidence indicates that the school board is not going to act. They really don't have any incentive to do so, and they're in gridlock when it comes to this specific issue. So let's not continue to wait for something that's not going to happen. Please pass this article as written. If any motions to amend are made, please vote them down. Give the district a chance to vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Neil? That is incorrect. That was the rule at one time, but petition warrant articles can be amended. In this case, the only amendment that I'm aware of that's legal would be to change the formula from 50-50 to 100-0. Would anyone else care to speak to the article? 0-100. Or 0-100 starts with the property valuation, whichever way you go.
Next up, who signed up to speak is Robert Young from Fitzwilliam.
I'm Robert Young. I am the person managing the content on the website keepfundingfair.com. I served on the committee that Ben mentioned and spent hundreds of hours on the project. I am proposing an amendment to change the article to read instead, to see if the district will vote to make a non-binding recommendation to make no changes to the apportionment formula. I'm requesting that it be done by secret ballot, and I have 6 signatures to go with that.
As previously discussed, I'm ruling that motion out of order, as it would, in a sense, create what's termed to as a nullity. The only amendment that we're allowed is to change the formula from 50-50 to 0-100. So that amendment is ruled out of order. Proposed.
There are the only other legal, according to what has been stated, the only other option we have is 0-100, meaning 100% by property value, irregardless of the number of students, and that would be complete nonsense. So essentially, this point of order suggests that there's no purpose for us to be here today because legally we are obligated to put 50-50 on the ballot with no changes. I object to the idea that a vote would be prevented, and I urge the moderator to allow the vote to proceed even if he believes that the article is illegal. People can determine later, at a later time, if in fact it was illegal for us to change what's on the ballot. But at a later time, one cannot make a ruling to come back and give us the opportunity to hold that vote to see how people feel about this. So with that in mind, I'm going to continue my discussion on the topic.
Your motion has been ruled out of order. If you want to address the article as written, please do.
The reason why the school board did not take action was primarily because the chair of the school board from Troy delayed action and stated, as is reflected in the minutes, that her reason for opposing a discussion about changing the formula was that she would prefer 50-50 because it lowers the taxes for Troy. Nobody proposing 50-50 has argued that 50-50 is the most fair that we can do. And so it is indeed the proponents of 50-50 that are the reason why the school board was prevented from having meaningful discussions on this topic. It was further delayed by telling the school board members that if they voted to consider, they would be subject to a whole day-long session on the intricacies of spreadsheets and whatnot. And legal counsel was asked to weigh in on a matter as well that delayed the process. If 50-50 passes, it is, in my view, unlikely to lower the taxes in Swansea. Because if 50-50 passes, I view it as unlikely that Roxbury will remain in our district long-term. Unless the school budget is cut proportionally to the reduction in student count, then the cost to the district will exceed the effect of changing the formula, so that Swansea residents may actually pay more after 50-50 passes and Roxbury leaves than Swansea residents would pay.
To that, because I don't know a due process where threats are not appropriate. Threatening to leave the district.
It's not a threat, it's a risk and a possibility. It's been done before.
Your comment has been heard, but Robert, your time is up. Would anyone else care to speak to Article 9 as proposed? Dick?
There's one more person.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Keith.
The last person signed up to speak is Jim Ruminaire from Roxbury.
Good morning. I'm Jim Ruminaire. I'm a selectman in the town of Roxbury. I'm speaking in opposition to the article. There are more than 30 multi-town school districts in the state of New Hampshire. The large majority of them base their funding, base their funding with more emphasis on student enrollment than any other factor. This particular, such as currently occurs in the Monadnock School District. If this article were to pass, that emphasis or preference would be lost. And in my particular town, the effect would be devastating. Currently, the taxpayers of Roxbury, in their contributions, tax payments to the school district, pay the equivalent of a little more than $16,000 per student. Were the article to pass, the per student cost from the town of Roxbury would exceed $20,000. That is more than triple the per student costs elsewhere in the district. One could say, well, Roxbury's a well-off town and can handle that. To those who have that feeling, I suggest that they drive through Roxbury, and they might also look at the Department of Employment Security statistics for the state that would show that the per capita income in Roxbury is not the highest in this district. Indeed, most figures are pretty close to one another. I have no bad feelings about those who drafted and who support this article. My ill will is reserved for the system under which we operate. It is a system that puts us at each other's throats. There was an effort made last year, referenced by Mr. Drug, to do something about that under the limits of state law. Good work was done, but not completed. It is expressed here today that the school board may not be willing to go forward with a significant reform. I would hope that this would be the case, that this article would not pass, and that there'd be effort put in it by the school board. Under the system that was discussed last summer by the committee, of which I was a member, it was most likely that under any circumstances, Roxbury's per student costs would rise. I accept that, but they would not rise to the level that would occur under Article 9, which would be truly devastating for the small town in which I live. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Do we have anybody else, Keith? Dick?
Dick Thaxton, Troy. I'd like to speak in favor of this article, but more importantly, I would like to speak in favor of the process. It's essentially, we had a conversation earlier, or a proposal where this was to be changed. The school board didn't act on it, the budget committee didn't act on it, and that's understandable because it's such a closely, it is a very divisive issue. Going back to what Mr. Rumadier said, this is the way taxes for schools are raised in New Hampshire. We cannot fix that in this room today. So what we have here is essentially a referendum, and we are putting it out to the voters. This is our choice. I think it's fair. I think it's equitable. I think it is unfortunate that we had an attack on the school board and the school board chairman for not doing something other than what they have done. So, Lisa, on my behalf, I'm sorry you had to hear that. But vote your conscience. Do what's best for yourself and your town. Whether you think 50-50 is more equitable, which I think it is, than 75-25, vote accordingly. If you think it isn't, well, we have a referendum. Thank you.
We had a couple of people that would want to speak. If those of you that wanted to speak would come up, and then we'll cease discussion at that point. Go ahead, ma'am.
Susan Silverman Fitzwilliam. I came to this meeting last year, and my request was that we look at this at the state level. We're kind of bound by state law, and though this same type of article failed last year, I do think we should give it another year for the state to solve some of the problems that are happening at a district level. We're town against town. As someone already mentioned, if you look at the household incomes in our towns, there are no rich towns and poor towns. We're all more similar than we are different, just like our kids that go to school together. You know, we need to think about the quality of the education, and we need to think about how we're going to fund that. But we can't solve all the problems here at the district level. And I'm speaking against this article because I think in another year we're going to see some change. And I look forward to that. And I will be attending whatever bills come up in the State House to help us change this. Thank you.
Doug?
Doug Bursaw, Richmond. I would just like to make a couple of points here. The first is the Budget Committee didn't take any position on this because legally it's not a question that we do. The school board has to put up any formula that's different from 50-50 or 100-0. Secondly, the effect of this change would be primarily to add $500,000 onto the shoulders of the Fitzwilliam taxpayers and take $500,000 off the shoulders of Troy. And in addition, Roxbury would be a casualty, as Jim Roosmanier just mentioned. So this is an issue of pitting town against town, and the formula that these committees came up with was something like 60-40, and it was very rational, and it split the difference between Troy and Fitzwilliam. Everyone knows the numbers, the cost of the public education is very high anyway, but to try to make one town fight the other town over it is not, it's not good for the district. So I'm hoping that this would be defeated, and the reason I'm saying this today is because all of you are opinion makers back in your own community. I think the best thing for the district is to let this lie as it is and get the school board to bring up a formula next year that would be more balanced. I have a hope that they would be able to look into that and do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Barbara?
Barbara Scully, Swansea. Last year when we were discussing this, there were a lot of figures that were presented as to what the impacts would be on each town. We just had the previous speaker allude to this would be a shift between Fitzwilliam and Troy. Roxbury, we know it would be increased burden. Are there any figures that the petitioners might have had, or maybe even the committee who worked on this, that would show us what the impact would be on Swansea and Gilsum, or maybe more specifically on Fitzwilliam and Troy?
Ben, do you have that?
I don't know that we want to belabor the point today with all of those statistics. It's definitely something that we can make available to you immediately after this. There's a lot to it, so yeah, because I don't have it right at my fingertips to hand out to you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Barbara Young from Fitzwilliam, and I was on that committee that was formed after last March vote. The committee, in my opinion, did amazing work and created a spreadsheet that allowed us to input data, and it allowed us to create outcome based on that data that the school board could look at and measure. We didn't decide on a specific formula. In my opinion, it wasn't our job to choose a particular one, but to hand it over to the school board to then make decisions based on what was best for the district. We originally handed them over 6 different options to look at with the spreadsheet tool for them to use themselves. The superintendent had had it. They've been aware of it since the March vote. We then attended every school board meeting in September, October, November, and December, and January, offering our services or to answer any questions they may have come up with based on the information that we passed over to them. We were there at every meeting. We also met with our town school board members, and within an hour and a half, they grasped everything that we had been doing, and our school board member did a presentation herself because it wasn't that hard to do. She presented a formula of 60-40 with a cap of 121. The cap is legal. The lawyers did look at it. And what the cap does is prevents a town from paying more than 20, in this case it would have been more than 21% more than any other town. Why should they pay 30% more, 20% more, whatever the number is? It wasn't for our committee to decide. It was for us to create the tool, pass it along, and give it to them. In that period of time, that was the best that could be done, apparently. I'm disappointed that more wasn't done. We went every meeting intentionally to support some solution. I do believe that in the next year, if we pass to not let this happen, it will force the school board to do something.
If we vote 50-50, they don't have to think about it for 5 years. By state law, the school board is the only one that can solve this problem. A citizen can only offer 0, 100, 50-50. My recommendation is to vote no and ask the school board to look at it. It is not hard. I am very pleased that we were able to give this information to our town school board member, and she grasped it quickly, understood it, created a 3-page presentation for them to look at. I think they need the chance to do it. And I think that us fighting with each other is not acceptable. For them to just say, we'll let them fight it out, let the voters decide. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Barbara. We had a motion to move the question. Who made the motion? No, we had a motion to move the question.
He was in line.
Oh, John was? I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead, Ben. Ben, go ahead. Go ahead, Ben.
Okay.
Hold on, wait.
John Tomalo from Fitzwilliam, and Rob just said that if anybody would like to see the numbers that they use to study this situation, that he would provide them. So good morning. It's a chilly morning, and this subject is always chilly too. We're here this morning to discuss funding to support our schools. Fair funding is the word that is echoed amongst friends, families, neighbors, and town officials. A committee called Monadnock Funding Committee was formed, and I served on this committee too, was formed to find a fair way to fund our schools. After several meetings, we came close, but eventually failed on the fairness issue and settled for what's called compromise. What is wrong with the 50-50 formula? It fails to be even close to fairness. Why should the town of Fitzwilliam have to pay $15,597 per student, which is the second highest in the district? Gilsum pay $11,812 per student, Richmond $11,311 per student, and get this, Roxbury $16,893 per student. Swansea's paying $10,712. But the town of Troy only pays $8,303. That's 50% less than what Roxbury and Fitzwilliam are paying. And if the article of the 50-50 goes through, Fitzwilliam's taxes are going to go right through the roof. And we're already making a very good contribution to the school system. Is this fair? If the 50-50 formula article passes, some Troy businesses will benefit tremendously as their taxes will go down. Troy has two large problems with their tax base. Number one, Troy Mills is shut down and does not draw much in the way of taxes.
Could we speak specifically to the article and not compare towns?
Okay. Well, fear not. My solution to fund our schools does not require assessments, formulas, caps, metrics, pooling, or disparities. It eliminates unfair costs to towns, thus polarizing them. It is simple and it is fair. Fairness is what everybody wants. Simply put, everyone pays the same cost per student. This is the way it works. Take the budget and divide it by the amount of students in the district. This becomes your student cost. You then multiply the number of your young student, you then multiply the number of your students in your town times average cost per student. Bingo. This is how you derive your costs to the district. I move to change the current formula 75-25 to 100%, 100-0.
You're making a motion?
I'm making a motion to amend.
To amend to 100% property valuation and 0 per student? Just the other way? 100% for students, 0 for property valuation. Okay?
I'm not sure how to explain it, but anyway, you know how I'm amending the article to go from the 75-25, which is current, to 100% 0.
Okay, John,
Everybody, meaning that everybody pays the same.
what's allowed is 100% property valuation, 0 per student, not the reverse. We have two formulas that we can consider, 50-50 and 100% property valuation, 0 per student. Those are the two that the statute allows.
Okay, well, I'll yield for further discussion, because I think we should have it. We came very close last year, spent a lot of time on it, and I think we need to spend a little more time and get this straightened out. So I yield, and go Patriots.
Thank you, John. All right, did we have anybody else? Ben?
So to answer the question, I believe that came from Swansea, that I said I didn't have right at my fingertips. Turns out I have all of this information at my fingertips. For 2018, the difference between 75-25 and 50-50 would have been $134,913 for your town. The tax rate difference would have been $1,708 at 75-25 and $1,684 at 50-50. So I hope that answers your question. There's a lot more that we could talk about, and I can certainly do that after the meeting. I think the one thing that I want to speak specifically to, because it keeps coming up, is cost per student. The cost per student has been the most interesting argument to me for sure, probably because it's the prevailing one. When I started peeling back the onion on this, I discovered a couple of very important facts. One was the figures being handed out over this past year were not an honest representation of the cost per student in each town. They exclude all grant money. Even the Fair Funding Committee, that included many cost per pupil advocates, recognized this as misleading. The numbers that came out today were exactly those numbers, excluding all of the grant funds. So when we study our cost per pupil at the district level, we include all of that money. So when we compare ourselves to other districts in the state, all of that money is included. But when we start arguing about it at this level, we exclude it. The reason why that is, I believe, is because it inflates the disparity from town to town, and it makes it look more dramatic than it really is. Another interesting fact, if you go through the exercise of equalizing the cost per student throughout the district, including all the grant funds, the tax rate disparity becomes extreme, really extreme. It'd be $24.60 in Troy and $10.58 in Roxbury. When I show this cost per student, show this to cost per student advocates, they say that's woefully unfair. That reaction confuses me, honestly, because after all, the argument is to pay the exact same cost per student, as John was just stating. So my next logical question is, if that's not fair, because that is an equal cost per student with these dramatic tax rate differences, what is fair in their mind? I've never gotten a straight answer to this, honestly, and we've talked about it ad nauseum in the committee. I've seen calculations that they call acceptable, but there's never a rationale behind what acceptable is. If cost per student folks would just tell me that they want their taxes as low as they can get them and plan to negotiate accordingly, I can certainly respect that. The truth is, that is the rationale behind the cost per student based calculations that don't equal across the towns. It's a negotiating tactic, and that's it. And I don't think the intent of the cooperative school district was to negotiate our way to the lowest tax rate. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. All right, we had a motion to move the question. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, the question will move to the warrant as written. And just to reiterate, I forgot who said it, but if this does pass at the ballot, the next opportunity for the district to adjust the formula would be in 5 years. So now we move on to Article 3. I'm sorry, Article 2. Eric? It was not, no, I apologize. In the beginning, I mentioned we only vote on amendments to articles. This article was not amended, so it would go to the warrant just as written. Article 2. Eric? Do we have a second? Do we have a second for Article 2? Somebody? You got it? Okay. After this article. It would be after this article. Okay, Eric, did you want to speak to Article 2? Okay. Dave, do you want to speak to Article 2?
I'll take that, Dave. This is an article to do renovations to the technology education portion of Monadnock Regional Middle High School, specifically the wood shop and metals areas. This cost would include the actual construction itself, the architects and designs, and also any equipment that might be needed as a result of those modifications.
Would anyone else care to speak to Article 2? Yes, sir. Wayne.
Just to give an idea of what the Budget Committee was thinking on this, we do not support this $850,000 for those improvements. It's twofold. We're in the middle. You're going to see this summer, or actually in March, Mount Caesar be addressed as far as the temporary buildings that became 25-year temporary buildings. We also have some temporary buildings in front of the high school that you'll notice, and if you walk around the back of them, they're starting to see rot. So this $850,000 was kind of a surprise to the Budget Committee. There wasn't a lot of back and forth about this. So we don't support that because I think we have some wants, some needs that need to be fulfilled rather than the wants. The administration talked about ADA requirements in the shop class, but it was internally generated, so it didn't really have any sway with us. So we don't support this because we think there's some other expenditures that need to be happen, like the 6 or so classrooms out here in the front. So.
Thank you, Wayne. Would anyone else care to speak to Article 2? Would someone move the question? Name? Do we have a second? Second. Okay, Article 2 will move to the warrant as written. Elliot? We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Articles 2 and 9. Do we have a second? Did you get that, Laura? Dick Thaxton, second. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration on Articles 2 and 9 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Article 3. Karen, would you care to move the article? Do we have a second on Article 3? Okay. Would anyone care to speak to Article 3? Karen, did you want to speak to Article 3? Okay. Anyone else? Wayne?
The Budget Committee does, in fact, support this article. This is a typical article we would see every year to make maintenance improvements, and we think it's needed. It's a little bit higher than we typically would see it, but we do support it.
Would anyone else care to speak to Article 3? May we have a motion to move the article?
Move the article.
You got that, Laura? Do we have a second? We have a second. Article 3 will move to the warrant as written. Elliot? We have a motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 3. Do we have a second? Got that, Laura? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Article 4. Scott?
Article 4 is written.
Do we have a second? Second on Article 4?
Second.
Got that, Laura? Scott, you want to speak to Article 4?
Yep. The part of this article that folks should understand is that the numbers described in Article 1, our default and operating budgets, do not include a line specifically for upgrading and purchasing district vans as needed. So this money is to raise to replace aging vans and to apply retrofitting as needed for handicap ramps and elevators, et cetera.
Wayne, did you want to speak to the article?
Yeah. The Budget Committee agrees with the school board.
Would anyone else care to speak to Article 4? May we have a motion to move the article to the warrant? You have a second? Okay, you got it, Laura? Who gave the second? Elliot? Reconsideration of Article 4, do we have a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Article 5. Rob, did you want to move this? We have a second? Laura, you got it? Anyone care to speak to Article 5? Wayne, no? Okay. Motion to move the article to the warrant? Got that, Laura? We have a second? All right, Article 5 will move, I'm sorry. All those in favor of moving Article 5? Oh, no, wait, Chief, I'm getting confused myself. Article 5 will move to the warrant. Elliot, there we go. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 5. Do we have a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Article 6. Was that me? It was? I didn't touch it. Betty, did you care to speak to Article 6? I mean, did you want to move Article 6?
Yes, I'd like to
We have
move
a
Article 6.
We have a second? You got it, Laura? Betty, would you like to speak to Article 6?
Briefly. I was on the board team that negotiated with the teachers. I think it was a very valid process. The teachers gave some things that I know they really wanted, and the board tried very hard to hold to the bottom line so that you folks would be able to afford to vote for it. There were things the teachers wanted that we would have loved for them to have, but it was going to inflate the whole process way too much. And then lastly, as I have said before, the teachers are our most valuable resource, more valuable than any other resource we have in this district. They devise the lessons, they work together, they care for our children every day. So thank you.
Wayne, did you care to speak to the article?
Yeah, the Budget Committee does in fact support this article. One thing I would say to the voters is just keep in mind, these two dollar amounts for year 19, 20, and 21 are going to be added to our operating budget. This isn't all separate. It's going to be added. It's not included, so that's all I want to point out.
We have one person that signed up to speak to this article, Debbie Gove from Swansea.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name's Debbie Gove. I live here in Swansea, and I have been a teacher in the district for 30, I'm not going to tell the real number, 30-something years. Thank you to the school board for the process we went through. It was long, and as Betty said, there was a lot of back and forth, but we appreciate their honesty and their support, and I hope that we will have your support for this article. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Would anybody else care to speak to Article 6? Motion to move the article. We have a second? Okay, the article will move to the warrant as written. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 6. Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Article 7. Kristen? You got that, Laura? Kristen, did you care to speak to Article 7? Lisa, did you want to speak?
Article 7 is on the MESA contract. That's with our support staff. It was a long and fair process that took place, and we feel like this is a very good contract.
Thank you. Wayne?
The Budget Committee does in fact support Article 7. We really wished we could have supported this last year, but we had a certain timeline that was set that we needed to have this information given to us, and the school board did in fact come through on that and gave us some time to review it, and we feel it's a fair deal for both parties. So.
Would anyone care to speak to Article 7? Do we have anybody, Keith? No. Would someone care to make the motion to move to the warrant? Got that, Laura? We have a second? All set, Laura? Okay, the article moves to the warrant as written. Elliot? We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 7. Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Article 7 goes to the warrant, or already has. Article 8, this was submitted by petition. Do we have one of the petitioners here to speak to the article? We have no petitioners here to speak to the article. Interesting. Okay, we have Doug Bursaw. Did you care to speak to the article? Sure. Vote no. Actually, I've got my own rule of order. I forgot to have somebody move the question. Do we have a second? Okay, it's open for discussion. Doug, did you want to come up? You're all set? Okay. Yep. Okay, Nick.
My name is Wayne Lacoste. I'm on the school budget committee right now, speaking as a resident. I ask all you voters here to understand why they would ask for this. A school board, and I'm not attacking them as people, that over time does not make decisions, does not have a long-term plan, and seems to have hidden agendas.
I'm going to ask to contain your arguments to something that's not combative. Thank you. Would anyone else care to speak to the article? Wayne?
I think this is the third time this has come up. I'm looking for a nod from Jenny Gamarlo. I think it was about the third time this has come up. Yeah. The role of the budget committee is it's strictly the oversight. We set the proposed number or move it through, and we set the default number. Over the last, I've been on the committee, I think 12 years. I lose track. It feels like 100. But we've done a pretty good job of making sure we keep the budget fairly flat. A lot of the expenses have been handed down to us. A lot of the revenue's been pulled back from the state, like the New Hampshire retirement system a few years ago gave us a higher percentage. We've spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars on this building alone, but we've still tried to keep the operating budget fairly flat. And it's not just the budget committee, obviously. We hold the feet to the fire of the administration and the school board to make sure that they're taking that into consideration. So I think it's a valuable part of the system, and I would ask people to vote no on this. So.
Wayne, would you care to come back and rephrase? No, I'm fine. Okay. Would anyone else care to speak to Article 8?
I'm Nick Mosier from Roxbury. I'm on the school board. I have hidden agendas, and I would encourage everybody to also vote no on this. I think the budget committee is a very important part of the process, and I thank them for all the work that they do.
Thank you, Nick. Would anyone else care to speak to the article? We have a motion to move the article. Do we have a second? We have a second. So the article will move to the warrant as written. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 8. Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Article 10. Karen? Karen has moved the article. Do we have a second? We have a second. Any discussion on the article? All right. The article will move to the warrant as written. Elliot? Oh, we're going to hold off. Okay. All right. Article 11. Neil? So moved. We have a second? Elliot? Well, there aren't any remaining. All right. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Articles 10 and 11. Do we have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Well, thank you all for coming out. Give yourselves a round of applause. You did a great job today. Thank you.